The spotlight was searing, the audience was buzzing, and live TV was marching on. But no one expected what was about to happen. Imagine this: Saturday Night Live, the iconic sketch comedy stage where anything can happen, buzzing with A-list talent, laughs, and, on this night, high stakes. In one corner, Meghan Markle, stepping in as a surprise guest to promote a new women's empowerment campaign. In the other, Colin Jost, the SNL head writer and sharp-witted co-anchor of Weekend Update, mic in hand and eyes gleaming behind his trademark grin. This was supposed to be light-hearted banter, a win-win PR moment for Meghan. Instead, what people call a public ambush. But before we break it all down, make sure to hit subscribe, smash that like button, and drop a comment telling us if you think Meghan got triggered or if Colin just called out the truth. Because this isn't just funny business, it's a media moment with real stakes and real consequences. From the moment she hit the stage, Meghan was glowing, confident in a cream-colored dress and softly delivered message. She began her appearance with a heartfelt sentiment: "I know we're here to laugh tonight, but I also want to dedicate this moment to my mother-in-law, Diana, who I believe would have been in our corner if she were here." The audience oohed. Cameras panned. Everything was going according to script. That's when Colin leaned forward, grinning as he set up his line. "Ah, that's lovely. Just one thing: people actually watched Diana die before Meghan married Harry. So unless Meghan secretly invented time travel, that's a compliment impossible to give." The studio exploded with laughter. Meghan's eyes widened. She paused, pressed her lips together. The music kicked in. The moment ended as quickly as it began, but not without consequences. In that split second, Colin didn't just crack a joke, he exposed a gaping contradiction in Meghan's narrative. The claim about Diana was poetic, but it didn't match historical timelines. And on SNL, with millions watching live, this was a calculated, high-profile call-out. Some cheered Colin's wit. Others called it mean-spirited. But one thing was clear: Meghan's words had just imploded in front of an audience primed to judge. Immediately, social media erupted. Clips of the punchline zoomed across Twitter and TikTok with lightning speed. Memes followed, proliferation of time travel Meghan jokes. Industries of hashtags popped up: #MeghanTimeTravel, #ColinCollett, #SenelBombshell. And pundits couldn't resist. Entertainment Tonight quoted screenwriters poking fun. Variety asked whether SNL had crossed a line. Tabloids claimed Meghan was humiliated on national TV. But the deeper story wasn't just the joke, it was how the logistical problem became a media moment. The fake Diana comment had just unraveled publicly with a smirk. Backstage, reports say Meghan was shocked, momentarily speechless, and recovering quickly, but clearly shaken. Her team jumped into rapid damage control mode, sending out statements like, "Meghan's comment was heartfelt, not chronological. We regret any confusion." But the damage had already been aired live. The repair job that followed? Practiced, but shaky. And that pause had given critics and comedians enough breathing room to run with the narrative. You don't get that kind of free material twice. Now, Colin isn't just SNL's joke generator. He's the guy who called out the Duchess live on stage. And in one fell swoop, Meghan's credibility took a knock. Not just factual accuracy, but deeper questions about her storytelling. This wasn't tabloid chatter, it was SNL, and millions saw it. So where does that leave her? Was this just a glancing blow, overshadowed by her quick response and follow-up interviews? Or did Colin Jost, with a single live line, dismantle one more layer of her narrative armor? That's just the start. We'll dive into the worldwide fallout, the online firestorm, the late-night reactions, how Meghan and Colin's teams are responding under pressure, and what this really means for public trust in the Sussex brand. If you've been following this story, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share your take. Was this a hilarious roast, or a moment of genuine reckoning? When the cameras stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, the real storm began, not on stage, but online. The moment Colin Jost quipped about Meghan Markle's tribute to Princess Diana, questioning its timeline and logic, the reaction was instantaneous. The video clip of the exchange was uploaded to Twitter within minutes. By the time the East Coast was going to bed, it had already racked up over 4 million views, sparking debates in every corner of social media. Instagram stories were flooded with screenshots of Meghan's reaction. TikTokers dissected the clip frame by frame. Even Reddit threads broke into multi-page debates. Some praised Meghan for keeping her cool. Others accused her of rewriting history. But one thing everyone agreed on: this was the moment of the night. What made the fallout so intense wasn't just that Colin Jost had made a joke. It was the implication that Meghan was crafting a narrative that didn't hold up to basic scrutiny. And to do it on live television, with no edits, no PR filter, that was a blow her team hadn't prepared for. By sunrise, news outlets around the globe were picking it up. Daily Mail ran a headline, "Time Traveler Meghan?" The New York Post followed with, "Jost roasts Markle's Diana tribute," and even outlets like CNN and BBC couldn't resist a segment. Behind the scenes, it said that Meghan's team went into overdrive. One source close to the production claimed there was genuine panic in her PR camp. Press releases were being drafted, edited, then scrapped entirely. The strategy had to shift fast. Instead of denying the awkwardness, the approach became soft clarification. Meghan's spokesperson eventually released a statement. Meghan's comments were from the heart, honoring Diana's legacy, not tied to dates, but to values. It was calm, collected, but the internet wasn't buying it. What followed was even more intense: the media reframing. Conservative outlets used the moment to paint Meghan as manipulative. Liberal-leaning shows debated whether she was being unfairly scrutinized. Late-night shows had a field day. Even Stephen Colbert, usually more sympathetic, joked, "If Diana were watching from above, she'd probably say, 'Leave me out of this.'" The tone was shifting. Meghan wasn't just being questioned. She was being doubted by the public, by the press, and even by fellow entertainers. Then came the unexpected twist. The royals responded. While no official statement came from Buckingham Palace, royal insiders began leaking pointed remarks. One former royal aide reportedly told The Times, "It's incredibly tone-deaf for Meghan to invoke Diana's name for applause, especially when the timeline doesn't make sense. It reduces Diana's memory to a soundbite." Ouch! That wasn't just criticism. That was an indirect rebuke from the very institution Meghan has spent years pushing back against. And let's not forget Harry. While he didn't appear on SNL with Meghan, reports suggest he was furious after watching the clip. Paparazzi photos captured the couple exiting their NYC hotel that night looking visibly tense. Eyewitnesses described Meghan as silent and withdrawn, while Harry appeared to be on the phone, gesturing with frustration. Was it damage control or something deeper? Perhaps a realization that even in America, the press can turn brutal. But in this chaos, Colin Jost? He stayed silent. No apologies. No walkbacks. He simply went on with his regular schedule, posting behind-the-scenes shots from the show, smiling with his usual sarcasm. For him, it was just another successful segment. But for Meghan, it was an unraveling. Her message, meant to honor, ended up raising questions about her authenticity. And the worst part? She didn't control the narrative this time. By day 3, think pieces were flooding in. Vox ran a deep dive. Is Meghan Markle losing control of her image? The Guardian questioned, does royal branding still work in the age of fact-checking? The answer wasn't clear. But what was obvious was that Meghan had been knocked off balance in a very public, very permanent way. This wasn't just a blip. This was a flashpoint, one that reinforced a growing belief among critics that Meghan's carefully curated image was beginning to fray under pressure. When you build a narrative on emotional storytelling, people expect authenticity. And when the story doesn't quite match the facts, even a single joke can blow it apart. So where does this all go next? That's exactly what we'll explore: how Meghan's team is scrambling to repair the damage, what this means for her future media appearances, and why this one SNL moment could mark a turning point in her relationship with both Hollywood and the public. As the media storm refused to die down, Meghan Markle's PR team sprang into full-on crisis mode. This wasn't just a poorly received interview or a misquoted line. This was a viral wildfire, and the internet wasn't letting go. Meghan had been the subject of controversy before, but what made this moment uniquely damaging was the tone of the mockery. It wasn't just critics or tabloids piling on. It was mainstream comedians, editorial writers, and even casual social media users who had once championed her as a symbol of modern feminism. Now, that sympathy was cracking. Behind the scenes, Meghan's strategy was shifting. No more vague statements about misunderstood meaning or emotional context. The team knew those approaches weren't landing. This time, the goal was to reposition Meghan as the victim of targeted media hostility. Word was leaked to select journalists that Meghan had been blindsided by SNL's writers, who allegedly changed the script just minutes before going live. Some outlets ran with the narrative, quoting anonymous sources claiming the skit was never rehearsed with her present, and that Colin Jost had ambushed her with that dig about Diana. But even those sympathetic takes were met with skepticism. For many viewers, this wasn't about ambush. It was about credibility, and it raised a much broader question. Has Meghan lost control of her message? The answer was starting to become visible across her network of appearances. A scheduled podcast episode she was set to drop that week was quietly postponed. A planned sit-down interview with a major women's magazine was suddenly rescheduled due to scheduling conflicts. And while no official word came from Spotify, rumors swirled that her next media deal was being reevaluated following concerns over public engagement. It was the first time in years that Meghan wasn't dominating the narrative. She was chasing it. Meanwhile, Colin Jost was still riding the wave, not because he was attacking Meghan directly, but because audiences were clearly tired of untouchable celebrities. His jab wasn't seen as cruel, it was refreshing. Finally, someone had said out loud what many had been whispering for years: that Meghan's stories, particularly about the royal family, sometimes change to fit the moment. One tweet captured the sentiment perfectly. If Diana died before Meghan even met Harry, why are we pretending they were soul sisters? It was a brutal take, but one that thousands agreed with. Back in Montecito, Harry was feeling the heat as well. Sources close to the couple said that this incident reopened old wounds, especially around his family's rejection and the public's judgment. Harry reportedly wanted to fire back with his own statement, but Meghan's team advised against it. The last thing they needed was a tit-for-tat with a comedian, one insider shared. It would just amplify the mess. But behind closed doors, tensions were high. The royal exit had always carried emotional baggage, but now their life in Hollywood wasn't offering the refuge they'd hoped for. Instead of controlling their image, they were being defined by others, a position they had fought so hard to escape. And then came the most surprising development: a resurfaced interview from 2020. In this old clip, Meghan claimed she had always admired Diana, but never once mentioned crying over her before meeting Harry. The contrast with her recent SNL statement was glaring. Internet sleuths jumped on it. Side-by-side videos flooded TikTok. YouTube reaction channels published breakdowns. And worse, some former royal staffers who had worked with Diana stepped in to call it out. One former palace aide told a British morning show, "It's perfectly fine for Meghan to admire Diana, but to suggest a deep spiritual bond before ever meeting Harry seems convenient." At this point, even longtime Meghan defenders began to feel uncomfortable. Not because they doubted her entirely, but because the inconsistency was now undeniable. A major celebrity brand, especially one built on empowerment and authenticity, can survive a lot. But credibility? That's the foundation. Once it's shaken, everything else trembles. Ironically, the fallout wasn't just Meghan's burden to bear. It impacted Harry too. With each new appearance he made, he was asked about her, about SNL, and about Diana. He could no longer control the conversation. Even when he was promoting environmental causes or mental health initiatives, journalists kept circling back. Do you think Meghan exaggerated? It was becoming clear this wasn't going away. And perhaps most alarmingly for Meghan and Harry, Hollywood itself began to shift. Executives who once courted their involvement were suddenly hesitant. Producers began asking questions they hadn't before. Can she withstand criticism? Is her brand sustainable? Will this project be overwhelmed by baggage? It was no longer about headlines, it was about risk. But Meghan wasn't giving up just yet. In the days that followed, she reemerged at a charity event in LA, poised and smiling. She didn't address the controversy directly, but her appearance was clearly designed to signal resilience. Her speech, carefully worded, referenced truth-tellers and the cost of speaking up, a subtle nudge at the SNL incident without naming it. Still, the media wasn't convinced. The damage had been done. The narrative was no longer Meghan speaks truth to power. It was Meghan's truth doesn't always line up. And that, more than anything, was her greatest obstacle now. The fallout from Meghan Markle's appearance on Saturday Night Live wasn't just a trending topic, it was becoming a cautionary tale in celebrity media management. As the backlash continued to ripple across platforms, Meghan and Prince Harry found themselves at a crossroads. What began as a seemingly spontaneous, emotional remark about Princess Diana had spiraled into a national conversation about authenticity, media manipulation, and the unraveling of a public image carefully built over years. And now, the consequences weren't just reputational, they were structural. Hollywood, once their safe haven, was shifting. Quietly but unmistakably, industry insiders were re-evaluating the Sussex's value. A producer at a top streaming service, who had once been eager to develop a docuseries around Meghan's philanthropic work, reportedly pulled the plug. It's not about controversy, they told a trade magazine off the record. It's about control. And right now, Meghan doesn't seem to have it. Others echoed the sentiment. The Markle brand, once seen as a combination of royal glamour and modern activism, now came with too many liabilities. Meanwhile, public sympathy wasn't bouncing back. Polling data in the UK and US showed a noticeable dip in Meghan and Harry's approval, particularly among young viewers, a demographic that had previously embraced them. Focus groups revealed a growing frustration, not because Meghan had shared personal stories, but because those stories seemed inconsistent. We wanted to believe her, one participant said, but it's hard when the narrative keeps changing. Back in Montecito, the Sussex household was reportedly in strategy overdrive. Meghan's team, which had previously relied on a mix of high-profile interviews, Instagram-worthy charity work, and carefully staged public appearances, now had to consider a new playbook. One idea? Distance from the controversy entirely, let it die down naturally, avoid further comment, and re-emerge in a few months with a softer, less political initiative. Another idea, more aggressive, involved Meghan sitting down with a sympathetic journalist, Oprah again, or someone like Gayle King, to set the record straight. But there was risk either way. Speak too soon, and she'd fuel the fire. Wait too long, and she'd lose the spotlight permanently. Meanwhile, Colin Jost wasn't just weathering the storm, he was thriving. Saturday Night Live saw a boost in ratings the week following the sketch. Clips of his monologue were going viral across platforms. Even publications that usually avoided royal drama picked up the story. Rolling Stone published an op-ed titled, When comedy tells the truth, why Meghan Markle's bubble just popped. The piece argued that Jost had done what few dared, point out that Meghan's narrative was no longer consistent with her actions. You can only claim to speak truth to power, the article noted, if you're not also the power. It was a cultural moment, a crack in the carefully polished image of modern celebrity activism. And Meghan wasn't the only one feeling it. Harry, too, was caught in the storm. Appearing at a veterans fundraiser, he was hit with unexpected questions about Diana and Meghan's tribute. A source close to the couple revealed that Harry felt betrayed by the media once again. But this time, even his usual defenders were quiet. The silence was louder than any tabloid headline. And then, the final blow came, not from the press, not from a late-night comedian, but from within the palace walls. Buckingham Palace, long silent on Meghan and Harry's post-royal life, issued a rare statement. It didn't name Meghan directly, but it reaffirmed the late Princess Diana's legacy in a tone many interpreted as a subtle rebuke. The memory of Princess Diana belongs to the world, not any one individual, it read. Her strength, her compassion, and her truth are reflected in her lasting impact, not in fictionalized tributes. The message was clear. Diana's legacy was not a media tool to be wielded, and the palace wasn't going to remain neutral anymore. For Meghan and Harry, the road forward was uncertain. Once media darlings who seemed to command headlines at will, they now faced an uphill climb to regain control of their narrative. The trust gap had widened. The audience was no longer just listening, they were fact-checking. And the damage wasn't limited to the public. Brand deals were quietly backing out. Meghan's fashion collaborations saw a dip in engagement. Their Archewell Foundation, still operational, was facing internal doubts about its media direction. Staffers were reportedly frustrated with the lack of unified messaging. Some questioned whether the couple should pull back entirely and refocus on private, less polarizing initiatives. But one thing was clear, the age of unchallenged royal celebrity was over. So what comes next? Meghan and Harry could double down, release a podcast, drop another docuseries, speak louder, and hope to drown out the noise. Or they could take the more strategic path, silence, regrouping, a slow rebuild of trust through quieter, more consistent work. It's the route many advisors are now pushing for, but the choice is theirs. And the public? They're waiting, not just for the next headline, but for a reason to believe again. If you've stuck with us through this breakdown, make sure to smash that subscribe button, hit the like icon, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Has Meghan truly lost her grip on the narrative, or is there still a redemption arc ahead? Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, we've got more coming.